Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a topic that often gets overlooked but can make a world of difference in your home theater experience: acoustic treatment. Cost frequently poses a challenge in achieving optimal room acoustics. Typically, acoustic panels come in a hefty price tag. However, in this video I'll demonstrate a straightforward DIY method for sound absorption and reflection using materials readily available from your local hardware store. When it comes to creating the ultimate cinematic experience right in your own home, it's not just about having the best speakers or having the biggest screen that you can have. I think one of the things that gets overlooked a lot is acoustic treatment, and that plays a huge role in achieving that immersive sound quality you're looking for. You can buy some expensive speakers, but if you don't have the room treated the way it should be, you're really not going to get the most out of those speakers that you paid a lot of money for. So without proper acoustic treatment, sound waves basically bounce around the room, causing echoes, reflections, and even distortions in the audio. I started off with making 3 sections on the MDF board that I'm using. This right here is a 1/4 inch thick MDF board. It's about 2 feet wide and 4 feet long. So what I decided to do is just make 3 sections of the board, so it'll be 16 inches in width. So it'll be 3 sections. This will make it easier to fit the insulation as well. We'll go ahead and make the necessary cut using a circular saw. Once we're done cutting the 3 sections, what I'm basically doing here is stacking them up. And for the top piece, I'm basically going to use that as the template, and I'm making a border right now so that I know where to stop when using the router to make the slots that we'll see in a later step. And it doesn't need to be perfect. Basically, the border that I'm using is about 1 inch wide, so yeah, about 1.5 inches, I would say. So that should be enough. Once we made the border, now what I'm doing is I have a guide in the back where I'm basically using the ruler to just slide it along the board so that I can keep things straight and it's not going to be, crooked. So what I'm doing is making lines every 1/2 inch because the router bit that I'm using is about 1/2 inch, close to 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to make some lines every 1/2 inch, and then I'll be shading every other slot so that I know where to cut. You can see right here, I'm just simply marking them. You don't have to do this, but this is just to helped me organize it. So I pretty much, when I counted it, I had about 3 sections of 7 slots. So you'll see those, and I'm basically counting every other slot because we're going to be leaving a space in between every slot, about 1/2 inch. So right here, you may see I'm using a piece of scrap MDF board that I had left over. You can see I cut it in, or I'm basically marked it into different sections, and these different sections have different heights. Obviously, the slots that we're going to be making are going to have different heights, so it doesn't need to be perfect, or you don't need to be consistent unless that's the look that you're looking for. It can be random, as long as we have different heights and the slots are going to be different, different heights. That should be fine. So I'm basically going to start off here, and I'm just going to mark where the cuts are going to stop, so you can see like section 1 of each of the 3 sections that I had. I'm basically shading it, shading the part that's going to be cut out using the router. And like I mentioned, it doesn't need to be perfect unless you're looking for some symmetry, and you want to have all 3 sections be identical in the different heights for the slots. All right, so we're almost done marking here. We just have a few sections to mark up. And once we're done with that, we get to the good stuff of using the router. And you'll see that I'm going to make a mistake right about now. You see right here, the router bit basically jumped. This is one of my least favorite tools to use. It's really tricky and can sometimes be dangerous using a router bit. It basically jumped probably because I had different layers of MDF board. So it pretty much made the gap a bit unsightly to see. This is my second pass at it, and this time around it didn't really jump, so it went pretty smooth. So you can see right there, the first one that I did, it pretty much chewed through a section of it. All right, now what I'm doing is making the frame. So here I'm using a 1 inch by 3 inch, and the boards typically come in lengths of 8 feet. So if you can buy a few feet of these boards, they're pretty straight too. They're not like those unfinished common boards. These typically don't tend to be too crooked. You want to make sure you're using boards that are pretty straight, because when you hang these on the wall, you don't want them to be bowed out or lopsided or crooked or something. So I'm putting some glue and pretty much using a brad nailer to stick them together. And like I mentioned, so the pieces that I have are, the length of this acoustic panel is going to be 24 inches long and 16 inches wide. And of course you can, customize it to whatever size you'd like. But in my case, I just simply to make these 16 inches wide. This could be a bit messy since we're using glue, but it's definitely going to help to have some glue on there to keep the joints tight. Once we've made the frame, the next thing that we're going to be attaching is the actual piece that goes on the top, which is the diffuser board. This is what we're using to diffuse. So it serves two purposes. It's going to absorb a lot of the lower frequency sounds. It's going to go through the slots and will get as absorbed through the insulation that we're going to have inside. So I'm putting some glue down here so that we have a good bond between the top of the panel and the frame. I'm using Gorilla Glue here. So we'll set this at the top. Just try to line it up. You can see the slots, like I mentioned earlier, the router was really tough to use. So all my slots actually came out in different, I guess, sizes. Some are wider than others. So, you know, I try to do my best to correct some of the, some of the mistakes that I made. It's definitely a tough tool to use, but, you know, I don't really care for it to be all that pretty. As long as it's presentable and it does its purpose of serving as a diffuser and also, you know, absorber, I'm okay with that. We'll go ahead and use the brad nailer to put a few brad nails in the frame to hold the glue. All right, now that we're done, it looks pretty good so far. You know, I'm not a carpenter, but I think for the purpose that I needed to serve, I'm okay with that. It doesn't need to be perfect. And what I'm doing now is just using a fine grit sandpaper. This is 220. I'll be sanding the edges, but first we'll go ahead and try to close out some of the holes that I made from using the brad nailer. And I'm just using my finger to kind of fill in those holes. We'll go ahead and just sand the edges just to make it smooth as possible so that, you know, we don't have any burrs or anything like that. We've sanded the top as well. Like I mentioned, I'm using 220 sandpaper. Especially the edges too. You want to go ahead and sand them so, you know, you don't have anything that's sticking out. These boards are pretty, they're already primed. That's why I decided to use these. They do have unfinished boards, but those tend to be a lot of times crooked because they're not finished. But these are pretty straight and, you know, they make it easier to paint later on. So things are starting to come together. Now we get to the part where we're just going to be painting. You can use a spray paint. These are not big panels, so I guess, you know, a can or two should serve. And probably using a spray paint is probably going to give you a finer finish, a more consistent finish. But in my case, I just decided to use a roller. These are just cabinet rollers. So they're just used to, they'll give you a more finer finish than, I didn't want to use the brush and see any brush strokes. So we'll just go ahead and paint it. And you may notice too, by the slots, I have some black paint there. What I did is to make it easier, because sometimes the inside of the slots, you'll be seeing like the MDF. So what I did is just use a black spray paint and spray painted it before I actually hand painted it using the rollers, because it's tough to try and paint the inside of those slots.
Three hours later.
All right, we're back inside. So we're definitely making some progress here. We finished painting. I let that dry a little bit. It's not completely, I guess, cured, but it was dry enough for me to bring it back inside and continue on to the next part. So right now what I'm laying down is just some black fabric that will basically hold in the insulation as well, but actually make it look nice on the front. So the slots have a black back to them. So this is just a regular fabric that I picked up from my local Joann Fabrics. So what I'm doing is I'm just stapling it from the inside. And once I got that down here, you know, again, we're going for the cheapest possible, you know, options here. So I'm using some leftover landscaping fabric. I think this should serve just fine. This will basically hold in the insulation as well, because I didn't want to rely on the fabric. I wanted to also hold it in using the landscaping fabric here. So we'll just go ahead and staple this on the inside as well. And this one that I'm using, this is not like the heavy duty one. This is the medium one. This is essentially weed barrier. So just landscaping fabric, because you don't want the insulation kind of blowing in the air or something like that. Not that it's bad, but you know, we don't want to create dust or anything like that, especially when you know, I guess if you have a lot of bass in the room, but this should hold it in. All right, so the insulation that I'm using is the Rockwool Safe and Sound. So you'll be able to pick this up from your local Home Depot. This comes in, it's actually 3 inches thick. It is 15.25 inch wide, and it's 40 inches tall. So one of these should be able to make 2 panels, I guess, in my case. All right, so once I got the insulation in, I'm just going to cover the back using the same landscaping fabric here. And you may notice too, I did add a cross section in the back. This will make it easier to also attach a bracket that you use to attach it to the wall. and it should make the square a lot more stable so that it doesn't, bend or anything like that. Go ahead and staple them in. So we're just cutting off the excess material here. So what I decided to use is carpet trim for the bracket. So this essentially serves as a French cleat system. It works for me, and it's the most cost-effective way. Hopefully you found this video helpful. I think we can all see that with just some readily available materials, we can make nice acoustic panels and save money.